Clips and images used in my videos are owned entirely by the copyright holders. I do not own anything shown in this video and am simply using the footage for commentary and criticism under fair use. Please support the copyright holders like I do by legally purchasing and watching this movie in its entirety via whichever rental outlet you prefer. Thank you. What's up, everybody? As always, this is Dylan here. A couple things before I get going on the beauty that is Delta Farce is just some simple house cleaning stuff. So obviously I've only done the one episode about the Emoji Movie, and since then I've kind of decided to go a little bit of a different direction with what I'm doing here, where it is still going to be like, how good is it, but it's going to be more centered towards like, does this movie deserve its score, and also categorizing different movies into like a good hate watch or a good shit watch or a hidden gem are probably the three core things. So for example, like the Emoji Movie, were I doing the Emoji Movie this time, would be probably a hate watch, because it's just so like arrogantly in your face about like what it is. Also, I think I gave it way too high of a review last time. I sat on it a little longer and I was like, that movie's probably closer to like 20, 25. So that's kind of two things where like, I'm gonna try to be better about giving more realistic reviews, and I'm also gonna start categorizing in a different way, because this channel, I want it to be about finding good movies in this like endless sea of bad movies. And maybe further down the line, I might do like good movies that, like, whether they deserve this score or not, but for now it's gonna be all bad stuff, and figuring out, you know, if there's a good watch in there somewhere. So now that that's out of the way, let's talk about Delta Farce. Delta Farce is a Larry the Cable Guy comedy about three friends in the Army Reserves who accidentally get sent off to Fallujah. So really the core aspect of this movie, there's not a whole lot else that I can really talk about except for the humor. It's not really like a raunchy comedy, but it is an obnoxious comedy. There's a lot of like bumbling humor, like the three guys are just like stupid and they know it, or like they're a certain way they know it, but there's a really specific type of like self-incriminating humor in this movie where it's like a lot of, it's like self-deprecation, but it's not. It's more so like here's a good example right here.
Keep your eyes open. Some drunk has been exposing himself to the waitresses at the Denny's across the street. The last time the crazy bastard was carrying a samurai sword.
You kind of see what I mean. Just in terms of like, oh man, there's a pedophile on the loose, and it's like, oh, haha, my bad. Or it's like, oh man, this is just like that one time that you like accidentally like killed a cat, and it's like, oh yeah, that cat shouldn't have eaten my cornflakes or some shit. Where it's like they make it really endearing, but on the surface it's kind of like really inherently like odd. There's a lot of that kind of humor, and there are some things in this movie that are just genuinely funny, but the core of this movie, and also the core of what's really funny, is that in the process of them getting sent to Iraq, they accidentally get sent to Mexico. And they spend a lot of time in Mexico thinking that Mexico's Iraq. And there's two sides of this humor. The first is that it's actually not the worst setting for a comedy, especially with three guys, like just three redneck dudes who are obviously like stupid as fuck. It's really not a bad concept, and I actually thought it was really funny. It works in its own way because of these characters that they've created. It's believable that they would be like, I don't know what Mexico looks like, you know, like shit like that. And so the flip side of that is that this movie's fucking really racist. Like super fucking racist. Because the endearing parts of this movie they're endearing, you know, like there are parts of this movie that have genuine laughs, and there are parts of the movie that have genuine laughs that have absolutely nothing to do with this concept of Mexico and Iraq becoming like confused. But there's like only a certain amount of times where like you can make that distinction before it treads into territory of like, okay, why is that? Like this isn't like a dumber, like you could, if this was like a Dumb and Dumber style comedy, or you could kind of be like, okay, but it's kind of like, why is this confusion there? And I don't want to talk about the racial implications of Delta Farce, because that sentence that I just spoke alone just made my brain collapse into dust, just thinking about how useless of a concept that would be. But I do want to talk about it a little bit, because like, man, there's some shit in here that's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Here's just a compilation. I can't do just one. Here's just a compilation.
You will be the tip of the spear Uncle Sam uses to shove up some insurgent's ass.
Sergeant, that's downright unsanitary. You know, I read somewhere them carpet flyers don't even use toilet paper.
Can it, dip? Are you Republican Guard?
Mary, they're not deaf, they're Iraqi.
What we need to do is find out whether they're turds or Shittites.
Think you mean Kurds or Shiites?
Hey, what though? She is a looker. If you play your cards right, you could end up with a war bride.
War bride.
Yeah. It's the right of every American fighting man to take a wife in a combat zone. My Uncle Charlie came home from Korea with one. Boy, Aunt Rose was pissed.
Like, first of all, carpet flyers is like, is there such thing as Disney racism? Like racism just founded in like strictly knowing about another culture through fucking Disney movies? Because that's what I feel like is inherent there. And like turds and shittites is just like, what the fuck? And the fucking war bride comment is like there's advanced level racism here. Like this isn't some entry level mid 2000s like post 9/11 Islamophobia here. Like it's not even like just like dumb racism. This is like complex 3-dimensional chess racism. Like this is like I can't even like quantify where this comes from. This is like writing room racism. This is like racism that you bounced off another person and they bounced off something else to get like the funniest version of racism possible. It's just like, it makes my neck flex. Like just like talking about it. Like I feel like I'm gonna like pop one of my arteries just like trying to like quantify this. And like there's a lot of reasons why I can't really quantify racism, you know, this being one of them. And like I guess part of this style of racism is like Bill Engvall and Larry the Cable Guy were on like blue collar comedy tour, and like that is another way to put this. It's just straight up like blue collar comedy tour racism. Just like this is straight get her done, you might be a redneck racism. And it's just like, it's baffling. Like this is like, it's almost so stupid that it's clever racism, because you had to like have the intellectual complexity to like twist humor into like forming racism into ways that I've never even heard before, that people don't even like think before. Like your average racist is like not thinking that. And like that's what makes it so fucking weird. So like that's kind of the other half of this. Like that's kind of why it's like, it's a hate watch and it's a shit watch, because it's like, it's a shit watch because it's so bad, but it's kind of endearingly bad, like in certain ways and in certain jokes. But then it's also a hate watch because you're watching this and you're like, I'm really fucking watching this, aren't I? Like, and it's just like, that's okay. That's gonna be the end of that conversation, or else I'm just gonna be doing nothing but like heavy breathing, seething, like just annoyed, upset at this for the rest of the time. And like, again, I'm not really gonna I'm not gonna sit here and pretend that like this movie offends me. Like it doesn't. Like, but just it's the style of comedy that they went after. It's just baffling, you know. Like that's really what it is. It's like I'm not really like mad. I'm not really offended. I'm just fucking baffled. I'm baffled at like the existence of these jokes and just like how deep they go. But that's kind of the end of that conversation. But there's a couple of like weird character traits in here. Danny Trejo's in this movie, just like a war king style of thing, like a colony king, where like they take over this town, and like that's kind of the other central plot is like Danny Trejo and his like soldiers, they like take over this town, and Larry the Cable Guy and his two friends, they end up in this town, they end up chasing away the soldiers, and they spend the rest of the time fighting the soldiers and keeping the soldiers away in different ways, you know, infiltrating the soldiers' camp. At one point, Bill Engvall gets kidnapped, which I'm gonna show you a scene in a second. But like, there's a couple really weird, there's a really weird thing about Danny Trejo's character. The first is that he's named Carlos Santana, and they keep making him the butt of the singer Carlos Santana jokes, where they think that every time anyone mentions him, they're talking about the singer Carlos Santana. Which is like, I understand the bit, but like Carlos Santana isn't really like a weird name. You know, so it's like, that's kind of the thing. And like, the jokes don't land, and it's not even worth showing them to you because it's literally just, that's the whole bit. But the other part of his character, which kind of goes hand in hand with the weird racist humor I was talking about, but have you guys ever noticed in comedies, especially in ones with like raunchy humor or like offensive humor, you know, stuff like that, where there's the one character whose humor is based in explicitly being not racist? Like, okay, I have a good example right here, and let me show you.
How many more men you got back in La Miranda?
All I gotta tell you is my name, rank, and favorite cereal. And that's all you're getting.
I think Ruben likes you.
It just seems odd that a man of your stature would embrace alternative lifestyles amongst his men.
You can't fire someone because they're gay. That's discrimination. You can get sued for that, huh? Besides, he's my nephew. You can't choose your familia. So he's here, he's queer, get used to it.
But like, okay, because first of all, Bill Engvall tries to like question his Danny Trejo like having gay guys, and his thing like that's supposed to be like weird. And then like there's like the explicitly like flamboyant homosexual guy, and like I can't talk about this for a long time, but it sort of brings up that trope of like, especially in comedies like this where like gay people, like gay men are always really predatory. The flamboyant men coming on to like the straight man, and like the straight man's getting real weirded out about it, especially in this scene in this movie where his name's Ruben, the gay guy, like his gayness is used as a weapon, like an interrogation tool, I mean. Like to get information out of this guy Bill Engvall, and also that happens again later in the movie. Where like, yeah, like his gayness is used as like a tool of like torturing a straight man into like doing things he doesn't want to do because the gay man is gonna rape the straight man because he's gay. And it's like, but like what I mean by like the woke humor is like, that whole response is like, you can't fire someone because they're gay, that's discrimination. And it's like things that are like perfectly logical, but like they're things that are used as like jokes. And like, it's like Republican humor where it's just like, it's like how Republicans love to do like the, did you just assume my gender? Or like, I identify as an attack helicopter. Like, it's like taking explicitly used like statements of equality used by like marginalized people and like turning it against them to like use as like a joke on their own without actually intaking and understanding like the purpose of why those statements exist. It's supposed to be genuine, but you know that like it wasn't written that way, and you know that like the audience isn't supposed to take it that way. Like that's just the style of humor that they give Danny Trejo, and it just comes off as so bullshit. Like it's just so fake, and I guess that's what I'm trying to say. It just comes off as super fake, and you can tell it's fake the second it leaves his mouth. The other weird thing about this movie is the reason that like I decided to watch this movie is because of the poster. How it's like a play on Full Metal Jacket, obviously. And so part of me was kind of like, I read the plot and I saw the poster and I was like, this could be kind of funny. I was like, this actually might be a really interesting movie to watch because like I was stupid enough to think it might have like anti-war sentiments. And for a second, it actually sort of did seem that way. Like there's a couple of jokes in here that are kind of like at the expense of like how like the army doesn't like operate smoothly, and like there's a couple jokes about how like, I don't know, just like kind of how America is like really like egregiously into like war and stuff like that. And so for a second I kind of was like, oh, okay. But like the more I watch this movie, like the further along it gets, the more it's sort of like, oh no, this movie is about like, it's just made for troops. Like it's troop humor. Like that's kind of it. Like, and that's kind of what I mean by like Republican humor. It's like troop humor, like and it's just like, it just comes off as like really weird. And it just like, the only thing I really have to say about that is like I can't figure out, because using Full Metal Jacket as a parody piece, I can't figure out if the people who made this movie severely misinterpreted Full Metal Jacket, or if they expected that their audience would have misinterpreted Full Metal Jacket and by proxy know exactly what this movie is going to be about. Does that make sense? Like, they saw the Full Metal Jacket thing and they're like, oh, Full Metal Jacket, that movie about how war kicks ass. You remember that funny sergeant? God, that guy fucking, he cracks me up. Like, and so they think that Full Metal Jacket's like a movie about like how war is cool or about how war is good and stuff like that. And like, can't help but wonder like what side it is. Yeah, that's kind of the movie bundled up into one. That's really everything worth talking about. In terms of like this movie being a quality shit watch / a good hate watch, I'd probably say so. Much more of a hate watch, just because of like how the humor is really kind of like very weird. But is it a good hate watch? I mean, I had fun gawking at it. Maybe you will too. So there you go. The next question. So I forgot to say this in the beginning of the episode, but this movie has a 4% on Rotten Tomatoes. Does this deserve 4%? I'd say I enjoyed like 5 to 10% of this movie. And like I said, I had some fun gawking at it. So it's not much better, but it's around there. Yeah, I'd probably say it's around there. So yeah, I think that's pretty fair. I think 4% is actually pretty fair. Yeah, definitely. So that's it. Thanks to everybody for watching. Follow the links below to my Twitter, to my Letterboxd. Feel free to watch the Emoji Movie version with the information that I said about it before. And as always, I will be back next week with another bad movie. Thanks, guys. Bye.
This is